What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today we're talking about my Week 12 NFL Power Rankings. I actually have some pretty drastic movement for a couple teams, but of course, another great weekend of football. Excited to talk about my thoughts on it, and let's go ahead and jump into these Power Rankings. Panthers are at 32. They got demolished. Not much we can say. The Cowboys were a terrible matchup for Carolina. They're a bad team looking for answers, so they're at 32. Patriots are down at 31. I mean, man, oh man, well, I guess we'll see what the quarterback situation is going to be, but if you're this deep into the year and you're turning it over for Mac Jones and you don't know what you're going to do with the quarterback position, you're not happy with Mac, but you don't really have a great other option. I mean, that signals a team that's going to be down here in the low 20s to into the 30s. So that's where the Patriots are, and plus so many injuries on defense that this team just really isn't what we thought they'd be preseason. Giants are up a spot. I was really surprised that they got the win. First career win for Tommy DeVito. Definitely not something that was on my bingo board coming into the weekend, but nevertheless, he actually played a pretty solid game despite being sacked 9 times. So, kind of the extremes of like Sam Howell were almost applicable to Tommy DeVito. But when he got the ball out, he actually didn't look too bad. But obviously, he's still not a long-term answer. The Giants' defense actually looks pretty good. Kayvon Thibodeau with an awesome game. Dexter Lawrence keeps doing his thing. So they got some bright spots, mostly on the defensive side. And congratulations to Tommy DeVito. Hope that family dinner was a fun one that night. Then we get the Titans down 4 spots. We've seen just about everything from now. Will Levis. I don't know if he's necessarily played a fully bad game, but this one's probably as close as it gets. He still had the deep ball dime to DeAndre Hopkins, so you still see the flash and the upside that's there with Will Levis, but this Titans defense, specifically the secondary, is just not very good. We'll talk about that when we get to the Jags. But, the pass rush is hit and miss. The offensive line's still a train wreck. Besides DeAndre Hopkins and Kyle Phillips, I guess you could throw in there, no one's getting open. Yeah, it's just, this is not a very good Titans team, which kind of makes the interesting about, all the rumors around Mike Vrabel maybe going to New England kind of a little interesting. Falcons, I'm going to have them stay put here at 28. In retrospect, this is a team I kind of wanted to move up more. But ultimately, because I'm like, they're a decent team. They have a solid defense. They have playmakers, but ultimately it's the quarterback play, 2 up and down. I don't really love either one of the guys that have started a game this year. And because of that influx and up and down nature of the quarterback position, those playmakers don't really get fully utilized. So, I wish I could have the Falcons up higher. Obviously, they were on bye this week, but, I was just thinking about it today, actually, before recording this. And I was like, they're probably better than 28, but, also the teams above them, I actually like a little bit more than the Falcons. So, because it just speaks to how deep the NFL is right now. Bears are up 2 spots. I don't like normally moving up teams when they lose, but you get Justin Fields back, so that's part of this bump. And dude, they took the Lions down to the wire, and really that defense had a huge get-right game, caused a lot of confusion against Jared Goff, kind of had him turn into, every once in a while, the clock strikes midnight and Jared Goff, and eventually kind of turns into a pumpkin. That was kind of one of his pumpkin performances on Sunday. Not that he was absolutely abysmal, but a lot of head-scratching decisions, a lot of bad plays there. Credit there to the Chicago Bears and their defense. Pressure still isn't great, but it's encouraging that they're still getting these takeaways despite that. And again, the return of Justin Fields, Khalil Herbert, that backfield looked awesome. DJ Moore making a lot of big plays. So give them the bump up despite the loss, mostly because Justin Fields is back. Cardinals up a spot. Another team that, don't like moving up teams in competitive losses. Them and the Raiders both up a spot, but the Raiders went down to the wire with Aiden O'Connell starting against Tua Tagovailoa, and I just did not think that these two offenses were going to be anywhere near one another. Ultimately, the Raiders defense continues to play a really good brand of football, and they contain Miami's offense, and ultimately, if you score more than 13, you might give yourself a chance to win that game. And then for the Cardinals, dude, with Kyler Murray back in this lineup, he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFC right now, considering, the injuries that have already happened. Of course, Rodgers leaving the NFC before the season. He's a top 5 quarterback in the conference right now. And that goes a long way, man, because he's elevating a lot of pieces around him. He's so great to watch when he's just making backyard football happen. He literally looks like a toddler who stole your phone. But nevertheless, man, because of him, he just raises their level of competition. And we're going to see where I have the Houston Texans. And the Cardinals battle them all the way down to the wire. Next 8 teams, I'm going to the Commanders and the Bucs stay put. The Commanders, I almost thought about just moving them down to 30, just underneath the Giants, because I'm fed up with it, man. But they're a zigzag team. Like, they have one week where they look like dog shit, and then they have one week where they look like a pretty good football team. So, Cowboys fans, if that trend continues, don't think that Thursday is going to come easy. I can see where, one, that's a divisional game. They'll probably want to play that close, but I could also just see with the back and forth nature this Commanders team plays as, like, they might play okay on Thursday, because it is embarrassing. Sam Howell, that was probably one of the worst games we've seen, and I felt like he's been making incremental progress week over week. This one was a big-time step back. passing attack should have been so much better. The offensive line could not hold its own against the blitzing that Wink Martindale was dialing up, and even in one-on-ones, like Kayvon Thibodeau was tearing up Andrew Wiley in this matchup the entire game. So, yeah, just a really putrid performance there from the Commanders, but they've kind of been that all year long. One good, one bad, one good, one bad. And the Buccaneers, they continue to battle. San Francisco's clearly the better team, and they lost by 13, right? Like, so it wasn't close per se, but Baker did just enough, hang it around. You get a deflection pick at the very end of the game that kind of puts the nail in the coffin. But up until that play, they're doing just enough to stay alive. And, I think the defense gives them a solid floor. And if Baker's finding Mike Evans, the offense continues to move the ball well enough. But it's an offense that can't run the football. And I want to see more out of Chris Godwin, but it's just not happening. So, it's kind of a limited team. I kind of feel like 23-24 is about as low as I want to take them, just because the defense is good enough. There's pieces on offense that are there, but they're not doing enough to either maximize what's there specifically on offense to where they should be even higher on this. But they lost. I'm not going to stay put just because, again, they kind of battled pretty well against San Francisco. And ultimately, I think they'd win in the head-to-head against the Raiders right now. That's kind of where I'm at. Jets, Colts, Saints, all down 2 spots. The Jets actually played this week. So, I mean, it's Zach Wilson. He got benched for Tim Boyle. I mean, talk about the lowest of lows, man. That's tough. And it didn't get better with Tim Boyle there. So, this offense, it's same old. It's bad because of the quarterback position. The defense can play its ass off, but it's not going to go anywhere with the quarterback position playing as it is. Saints and Colts are actually on bye this week, but I had to flip spots with them, the Packers and the Rams. And ultimately, Saints, Colts, both on bye, sure. Packers, Rams, they both score wins. I don't think the Packers, if they played the Chargers 10 times, I feel like the Chargers probably win 8 of them. Now, granted, putting any faith in the Chargers is risky business there. But this almost played like the Packers game against Pittsburgh, just minus the turnovers. The defense played a really good game, so I wanted to move them up. I do understand they're up and down, and they still have a really putrid record. And the Rams 4-6 now, nice solid win. I'm not going to say it's because Geno Smith left the game, but Geno missing essentially a quarter of that game certainly helped. And no Cooper Kupp, too. Like, having a big player go down and still getting a W stands out to me. But like I said last week, 25-18, these teams are all almost one and the same. I know the Commanders are in flux and the Raiders are in a little bit of a transition with Antonio Pierce. But, just kind of generally, let's just say 18 through 23, all these teams can kind of beat up on one another. So I'm not really too, strict on, the Packers for sure are a better team than the Saints. They played earlier this year and the Saints won, right? You can tell me on any of this, 18 through 22, they're all kind of one and the same. 18 through 23, that is. So, but because Packers-Rams win, had to move them up. Saints-Colts go down despite being on the bye. Steelers are down a spot. I'll go on a quick small tangent here because obviously they lose and the offense is putrid. Day of recording this is Tuesday, and thank God we finally got the headline that all Steelers fans have been looking for. Matt Canada's been fired. And what I find to be interesting about this is it was Art Rooney who did the firing. And I feel like there's a couple reasons for that, which is kind of why I want to go in this tangent. I think there is truth to the belief and the rumor that Canada and Tomlin are pretty tight, which is a little concerning considering some of the stuff I've heard about Canada as a human. On top of, there was no reason he should have been an offensive coordinator. There's literally nothing on his resume that says this guy should be an offensive coordinator at the NFL level. And his 3 years of not even mediocre, his 3 years of absolutely abysmal offensive production also showcased the guy should not have had a job as an NFL offensive coordinator. There's only 32 of those, and he had one of them somehow, some way. But I do think that there's some merit to that. But also, I think Tomlin didn't want to be the first didn't want to do something that hadn't been done since the U.S. got involved in World War II, right? Like, it's been since 1941. The Steelers have made an in-season coaching change. That's crazy. That's stability, and I think Tomlin does buy into that, and I think a lot of people should, because consistency goes a long way. But this was just a time you had to, it's okay, break the trend. I'm glad Art Rooney did step in and make the call. I think you hear the comments from Najee Harris post-game. You hear Kenny Pickett saying stuff that kind of don't put Matt Canada in the best limelight 2 weeks ago. They basically are having 2 of your last 3 first-round picks who have been on the offensive side of the ball, and the other one who's not talking of those last 3 first-round picks is Broderick Jones, the rookie, also on the offensive side of the ball. So you spent 3 straight first-round picks on offense, and the offense hasn't gotten any better. And now 2 of those first-round picks are complaining about the scheme, and you got Najee saying, we can't do this shit anymore. When you hear that as an owner, it's a great time to step in because it's like, okay, cool. We are putting investments and we are trying to get better and we're just not getting there. So I'm going to step in. We're going to make a change and then we're going to see what results we get out of this. That being said, I don't think much is going to ultimately change. I think there's some in-game sequencing and obviously throwing over the middle of the field. Fun fact, Jimmy Garoppolo has more passes between the hashes this season than Kenny Pickett. and Jimmy Garoppolo's played half the amount of games as Kenny Pickett. You can't have that. Pickett's got an NFL caliber arm, but it's not Herbert. It's not Allen. It's not Mahomes. So living solely attacking the sidelines does not make any sort of sense. So I think you're going to see more passes over the middle of the field. I think the in-game sequencing is going to be a lot better. I think you're going to see a whole lot less, second and long runs, putting Kenny Pickett in a 3rd and 8, a situation where he's just naturally not going to have a whole lot of success. Any quarterback for that matter. So I think some of that stuff's going to get cleaned up, and I think you'll see some natural progression with this offense. I still don't think it's a great, offensive unit because, look, Mike Sullivan's been he's going to be the play caller. He's not technically the OC, but he's the play caller. And he's been the play caller for 2 other teams, and they ranked 22nd and then 31st in the EPA per play. So, I don't have a whole lot of faith, and you're not revamping the playbook completely. But I think there's some of the in-game sequencing and the decision-making there that can be cleaned up, and I think Mike Sullivan will do that and learn from the mistakes of Matt Canada. But I still don't think Kenny Pickett's great. He's my QB4 from the 2021 class, or 2022 class, which was an abysmal class. I didn't think he had the high floor that people want to hype him up, and I didn't see a ceiling that matched any of the other guys I had above him. So, as a Steelers fan, maybe last year he had a little bit better play than I anticipated, but ultimately Kenny Pickett's kind of looking like who I thought he'd be. The offensive line still has a lot of headaches, specifically Dan Moore. And I don't think Mike Sullivan's going to turn this around, but basically I think what they've done is taken the first step in the right direction. This offseason, we're going to have a full coaching hire. Please do not hire Byron Leftwich. He is just as bad as Matt Canada. I don't care what anybody says. Look at the year that Tom Brady was not in Tampa Bay. You cannot hire Byron Leftwich just because he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Go out there, do an exhaustive search, and let's find the right guy. Let's hire someone from the Shanahan tree who is kind of moving the ball forward. I want someone who's thinking outside the box and kind of hitting on this last note one more time, attacking the middle of the field. Kyle Shanahan attacks the middle of the field more than just about anybody. The Dolphins almost exclusively feel like they attack the middle of the field. Not literally, but it feels that way when you watch the Dolphins play. The best, Bobby Slowick, same thing with Houston. The best offense in the league are attacking the middle of the field a ton. So I hope that's something that Pittsburgh carries into the offseason. Then you can have another offseason where you hopefully see Broderick Jones get a little bit better. Maybe find 1 to 2 more offensive pieces, one for the line, one as a pass catcher, and let's see what year 3 Kenny Pickett's looking like in a new system. Hopefully that's the direction this team's heading in. But, Mike Tomlin's offensive coordinator hires haven't really been the best. So we'll see. Anyways, let's get off that tangent, move forward now. Vikings are down a spot. They were still super competitive against the Broncos team, which you can see I have surging up these power rankings. I'm starting to buy into it. I'm starting to believe it. And if not for fumbles, the Vikings have a chance to win this game. This has kind of been the story all year long for Minnesota. I think Flores is still doing a great job of that defense. Josh Dobbs is keeping the floor relatively high for that offense, specifically because of his rushing ability. And next week, you get Justin Jefferson back. So I'm still relatively bullish on the Vikings. And, even with the loss, they still have a north of 50% chance to make the playoffs. It's a pretty good spot to be if you're a Vikings fan, considering there's no Kirk Cousins. Bengals are down 10 spots. Joe Burrow after the year, that's not the same Bengals team. So I don't like doing knee-jerk moves. I don't like overreacting, but I did want to buy into the Broncos because I think it's legit. I think I've seen it long enough now to where I can buy into it. And the Bengals losing Joe Burrow, this is a completely different team now. So Cade Brown the rest of the way. The Bengals are at 15, and probably in another week or two going to be side by side with the Jets, probably a step below, because at least for the Jets, the defense has been pretty consistently awesome, and it's been varying degrees of good each week. The Bengals defense has been up and down, and Trey Hendrickson's a little banged up. The secondary got some, age and a little bit of injuries there too. That's going to start to get thin too. So I just don't think this is ultimately the Bengals team that I thought I would see this year when I picked Joe Burrow to be my MVP and them to be my preseason Super Bowl pick. So, things happen. You get things wrong. Oh, well. Chargers stay at 14, and I know this is maddening because I know Packer fans are like, we beat them. I look at the record. I still think generally, the Chargers are a more talented team. Joey Bosa is going to miss a lot of time. Man, I don't know what. Ultimately, I think this is a team that any given week could beat any team in the league because the talent is there. Because any given week, Justin Herbert could just turn into God mode, and Keenan Allen could just still play like an awesome, like a stud that he is. And Khalil Mack, a couple games this year, has turned back the clock. But in reality, they have yet to live up to those expectations. And each week, it's something a little different. So ultimately, again, I keep bringing this back. It's Brandon Staley. I was so excited about the hire at the time, but he's got to go. And you get the post-game, a little bit of a spat against the reporter, kind of the first sign of a potential meltdown inbound. And you know what? I'm here for it. If Bill Belichick wants to be the head coach of the Chargers, if he retains Kellen Moore to be the offensive coordinator, Bill Belichick can still run a defense at a high level. And I wonder if they'd give him the GM role, right? Because Tom Telesco, I think generally, I like him as a general manager, right? He's the guy who drafted Justin Herbert, right? Undrafted free agent Austin Eckler, keeps bringing back Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, another draft hit of his, and Bosa, and then plus the move for Khalil Mack was a splash one, but ultimately that didn't pan out as well as we maybe thought it would, so that's a negative. J.C. Jackson's one of the worst free agent signings in recent memory, maybe of all time. They have not been able to find an upgrade in the middle of the defensive line to stop the run. So I don't know. I'm kind of up and down on Telesco. I think I like him in theory. But if Bill Belichick does go to the Chargers, I wonder if they would just make him the director of player operations and he'd be the guy making roster decisions too. Anyways, long team just aside, Staley's got to go because this team has way too much talent to be 4-6, 4-7 at this point in the season. It's abysmal. Broncos are up 9 spots. Like I've been saying since about week 4, I think it was a little slow start for Russell Wilson, but then I started to see it, man. This offense is figuring itself out. Sean Payton's calling good games. It's not like what he did in New Orleans. And Russell's doing a good job executing that offense. They're getting the run game involved. They're using Javonte both as a runner, but also as a receiver. Same thing with Samaje Perine. I also like Jason McLaughlin. And the defense really has taken huge steps forward. I do think there's going to be a little bit of regression. I could totally see them kind of falling to 16, the Vikings down to 17 or something right around there, because they have had an enormous bump in regards to turnover luck. And that's just too variable to say that that's going to maintain. Also, one last note I want to know about the Broncos. So glad Kareem Jackson got suspended without pay. I don't know what this dude is like, what his mission is with all these head-to-head and textbook crowning tackles that he has put on tape this year. Because he's an NFL vet. He's been in the league for double-digit years. Makes no sense for him to be headhunting. But he is, so it's so weird. I'm glad he got the 4-game suspension without pay. Hopefully this time it actually sticks. But I think the next one that he does, if he comes back from suspension and does it again like he did to Dobbs, like he's done to Logan Thomas and so many others, Joe Kobe Myers in there as well, I think you'd suspend him the rest of the year without pay. And I think that at that point it's his final blow and he's probably out of the league. So I want to get the final note there. I'm buying into the Broncos. I think they have a legit turnaround on hand, and I'm glad Kareem Jackson is getting dealt some heavy punishment here. Seahawks, I'm going to have to stay at 12. You played a quarter without Geno Smith. I generally like where this roster's at, so I know it's frustrating. Back-to-back weeks, the Seahawks lose, and back-to-back weeks, I don't move them. Because I think, any given week they can be competitive with just about anybody, and we got to see a lot of Jackson Smith and Jigba this week, too, so that wide receiver trio is really coming into its own. Kenneth Walker injury sucks, but that's why you draft Zach Charbonnet. Ultimately, that was a good draft decision. It's been a nice 1-2 punch with the two of them, but I think Charbonnet can handle that load. Boye Mafe is just, every time I watch him, I'm more and more impressed with him. Witherspoon's still a stud. You get an interception from Treacle, and so the pieces are there. The results just aren't yet. But I'm going to stick with process over results here. Despite back-to-back losses, I'm not going to move the Seattle Seahawks out of 12. Plus, the 12. It almost feels fitting. I had somebody point that out in the comments last week. Great shout out there. You got to keep 12 at 12. Texans up 2 spots. They're at 11. I know it was a lot closer than it should have been. CJ Stroud throws 3 picks, but these are the types of games that the Texans would have lost, a year ago. They would have just fumbled away, had a lead, but then blew it, because they're not used to winning. CJ Stroud has brought that swagger to the building where it's like, no, forget that. We're going to go win a game because we're the better side. And it's like that. Plus, I think DeMeco Ryans kind of brings that energy that has helped turn this team around. You're getting enough plays from the defense. Derek Stingley Jr., great to see him come in with the pick. And despite 3 picks, CJ Stroud's also making ridiculous plays, like that touchdown to Tank Dell, who, by the way, top 5 receiver of mine in this last year's NFL draft. Big fan of his, and man, the production has been there literally since day one since he got in Houston. So, love where the Texans are heading. The Cardinals are a scrappy team, especially with Kyler Murray. Glad to see they could hold on to that win. Jaguars are up a spot. They absolutely dismantled the Titans, and this was, I think, a good win there for the Jags. And Trevor Lawrence, best game he's played this season more than likely. Calvin Ridley, first big game we've seen since week 1, maybe week 4. You want to throw that in there? And this was a matchup where Ridley should have won. The Titans have really struggled against outside receivers all year long. This was one I needed to see for Calvin Ridley to say, okay, cool, they're going to still get him the ball when the matchup makes sense, I guess. I want to see them get him the ball more, but this was one that you had to have, and they did. Plus, good rushing attack. The defense played really well. Just a really stout performance there from the Jags, which also coincides with, I think the Titans are, they're kind of folded again for the season. Browns are on stay at 9. It wasn't a pretty win. I don't think anybody would describe it as that, but DTR puts together his best drive of the season at the very end of that game against the Steelers to get the game-winning field goal. Now they're bringing in Joe Flacco. I think that will be a bit of an upgrade, which Flacco's not great, but he just has experience running an offense, specifically one like Kevin Stefanski's. So I think that's a little bit of an upgrade. The defense is still playing out of this world. And, a 13-10 win against Pittsburgh. If you're a fan of the AFC North, that score does not shock you. And the fact that the Browns are beating the Steelers by that score is still like a change over the last decade or two. So I'm not going to move them up, not going to move them down. But, they won, so maybe you can make the argument they should move up. But also, I didn't move them down yet because of the Deshaun Watson injury. So, kind of nets out there. Bills up 2 spots. Look, I didn't think we were going to see this enormous turnaround. Oh my God, Joe Brady's so much better than Ken Dorsey. No. But you did see a whole lot more short stuff, which I think a lot of Bills fans wanted to see. Get the ball out of Allen's hands quicker, make less risk adverse throws, more screens, more underneath, more catch and run type of stuff. So not a whole lot of Stephon Diggs, which I don't love because I want to leverage my best playmakers when I can. But Khalil Shakir breaking off, 41-yard touchdown, catch and run opportunities for Dalton Kincaid, and getting James Cook more and more involved. So they're finding more ways to open up the playbook and get more guys involved. No catches for Gabe Davis in this one either. So really just not what you would expect from the Bills. You expect a whole lot of Davis, a whole lot of Diggs, but did it in a different way, and maybe that's going to be the move moving forward with Joe Brady, but we're going to need more time to see there. But this was what the Bills should have done week 1 against the Jets, right? Like no risk, in these throws. Don't let Josh Allen potentially throw it away. Just play your brand of football, and, especially in a game where you're facing Zach Wilson / Tim Boyle, doesn't take a whole lot to beat them. Dolphins are up a spot. It wasn't a pretty game, but you did just enough. And sometimes, you got to win the bad games. You're not always going to put together your best performance week over week. That's the goal, but you're not always going to do that. You got to find the games. You got to find wins in the games that maybe you don't play 100%. I think that's what the Dolphins did this week. Then you got the Lions up a spot. Kind of the same deal. Division games always play weird. I think the Bears get a big boost with Fields and Herbert back in the backfield. So they were going to come out and looking to land a big punch against the Lions, who have been one of these storyline teams all year long, right? Like best record since Kennedy was in office, right? Like you hear that all week leading up to this one. The Bears are looking at a target right on the Bears' back. So the fact that they handled that and still got a W, big. You definitely need to see Goff cut down on those turnovers, 3 picks, and the way he played this Sunday is just not going to cut it. But luckily enough, that's not really how Goff has played this year, so I'm not too worried about it. I think Ben Johnson's a great play caller, and they'll bounce back this upcoming Sunday. Cowboys also up a spot. They demolished the Panthers. Yes, that's Team 32 on these power rankings, but they still got the job done. Parsons, a freak. CeeDee Lamb continues to be awesome. I had a Jake Ferguson anytime touchdown bet. Luke Schoonmaker sniped me of that one, but nonetheless, basically everyone in this offense is getting involved, which you just love to see. Ravens going to stay put. Once Joe Burrow goes down, I think we all kind of knew what was going to happen on that Thursday night game. And what should have been the best Thursday night game of the season turned into a blowout. And Lamar, a little bit of an injury scare. I still don't think his receivers are playing great. Now no Mark Andrews potentially for the season. There's a chance that he could come back in the playoffs, but that's a big loss. So they get a win against a division opponent. They do it handily, but it's not really the Bengals that we thought we were going to get. Injury to Mark Andrews. I'm still optimistic about the Ravens. Love what the defense is doing. But now we're going to really get to see what this team's all about, especially with no Mark Andrews the rest of the regular season. Chiefs are down a spot. They trade places with the 49ers. Chiefs lose to the Eagles, one of the best teams in football, in my opinion. And they're just still trying to figure out this receiver position, man. That's been the kryptonite all year long, and it continues to be just that. Until they find an answer there, this offense is not going to have as high a ceiling as it once was. This is not going to be the Chiefs team that wins solely off of offense like they did 5 years ago. But I still think they have a top 5 defense in the league. Honestly, they might be a top 3 defense in the league, to be honest with you, because I just love everything they're doing. The pass rush, the linebackers are playing out of this world. Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed's playing like one of the best corners in football. Shoot, there might be an argument he's played the best outside corner season of the entire league. So I'm going to do end of the year like position rankings, not who I think is the best player across the board at this position, taking past years into account, but like who just played the best at that position this season. L'Jarius Sneed right now has put together a hell of a case to be on that list. 49ers are up a spot. The teams looked A-okay. Basically, they demolished the Jaguars after the bye week, and the train keeps on rolling this week. They're a much better team than the Bucs. The Bucs have a good enough defense to kind of keep things interesting, but all the playmakers get involved. I think Brandon Ayuk, I think I've said this a couple times on the channel, top 10 receiver, and I want to say he might be even higher than that for me. He might be top 5. Like, I think legitimately you put him in most other offenses where there's not as much playmakers involved. The guy's putting up astronomical numbers, and he's already doing that in San Francisco. 5 for 156 and a tutty. He's been a stud to watch this year. George Kittle gets in the end zone. Christian McCaffrey does too. All these playmakers, you're putting together this awesome stat line for Brock Purdy. It's interesting to see the 49ers at 2, the Chiefs at 3. Chiefs are this team that, outside of Travis Kelce, what playmakers are there? And then the 49ers, it's like, yeah, they don't have a Patrick Mahomes quarterback, but they got all these playmakers in a great scheme. So it's like, it almost just feels like, man, what would a Olympic roster basically be other than like Patrick Mahomes with the San Francisco supporting cast in a lot of ways? Of course, you want Chase, you want Jefferson in there. It's just an example. Don't yell at me. And then the Eagles come in at number 1. They take care of business against the Chiefs. I don't think either side played their best offensive performance, but a lot of rain in that matchup, and it was coming down hard. And both these teams have good defenses too. So I'm really impressed, and this is just kind of the gritty, grinded out win that we're getting accustomed to seeing from the Eagles over the last 2 years. So more of the same there for Philadelphia, and I got them staying at number 1 in my power rankings. Guys, let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Who's too high? Who's too low? Who's your favorite team? Where do you think they should slide into these power rankings? Want to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Until next time, my name is Teej, and I'm signing off.